Shu Ming Tang lived in San Carlos, California in 1993. He immigrated to the US from Taiwan with his wife and children. He opened a mom-and-pop shop called the Devonshire Little Store. On April 26, 1993, police were called when witnesses heard shots being fired in his store. The police found Shu inside. He had been shot. He was rushed to the hospital but did not make it. It was determined that it was a robbery gone wrong. Detectives received information that a woman was seen leaving the store shortly after the shooting. The crime shocked the quiet community of San Carlos and attracted national attention after it was featured on America's Most Wanted. Investigators hoped that useful leads would come in, but that did not happen and the case went cold for some time. In 2018, San Mateo County Sheriff's detectives assigned to the cold case investigations reviewed the case. Then, on March 24, 2022, 61-year-old Reina Elizabeth Hoffman Ramos was arrested in Dewey, Oklahoma in connection to the case. She lived in the same area as Shu back in 1993, but moved to Oklahoma in recent years. Investigators believe that she acted alone. She has a criminal history according to investigators. She is currently waiting in Washington County Jail, waiting to be taken to California to face the charges against her. San Mateo's County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Jacob Trickett did not want to elaborate on what exactly led to the arrest, but thanked the advancement in forensic technology. Shu's family has been informed that an arrest has been made in the case. San Mateo County Sheriff Carlos Bolaños said the department thanked Shu's relatives for their support, and he hopes the family will finally get the justice and closure that they deserve. "20-year-old Eve Wilkowitz lived in Long Island, New York in 1980. She worked as a secretary in Manhattan. On March 22, 1980, Eve took a Long Island Railroad train home to Bay Shore. After leaving the train station, she still had to walk to get home. Sadly, she would never make it there. 3 days later, her body was found. She had been strangled and assaulted. Investigators collected male DNA from her body that belonged to the person that took her life. It would take many years before investigators were able to use the DNA to identify a suspect, but recently, they did just that. They created a DNA profile of the suspect. Then that profile was submitted into public DNA databases. Finally, in 2022, investigators identified the son of the suspect. The son had entered his DNA onto a public genealogical website. Investigators went to interview the son, and he then gave them a DNA sample. After some more testing, investigators were convinced that Herbert Rice was the man they were looking for. The only problem was that he passed away in 1991 due to cancer. Rice was 29 years old at the time of the crime back in 1980. He lived with his mother near where Eve's body was found. Investigators then exhumed Rice's body and had a genetic analysis of his DNA confirmed that he was the one that took Eve's life. In late March of 2022, a press conference was held to announce the update in the case. Eve's sister, Irene Wilkowitz, had this to say at the press conference about seeing the face in a photo of the man who took her sister away. "This is my first time seeing him. I didn't Google him even though I knew his name for a couple months now. I didn't want to see the last face that Eve saw when she was still alive." Prosecutors don't believe that Eve and Rice knew each other. They believe it was simply a crime of opportunity. 61-year-old Patricia Lorraine Barnes lived in Seattle, Washington in 1995. She was homeless and bounced between shelters in Seattle, and frequently stayed around the Pioneer Square area. Her friends in the homeless shelters referred to her as the Towel Lady because she often wore a towel or bandana around her head. On August 25, 1995, a passerby found a body in the ditch along Peacock Hill Road in Kitsap County, Washington. The body belonged to a white woman. She was found without clothing and was partially covered by a sleeping bag in the ditch. Her pink curlers were found near her body. She was quickly identified as Patricia Barnes. She had been fatally shot. About 130 individual evidence items were collected at the scene where her body was found. This included a cigarette found nearby, believed to have been used by the culprit, and the sleeping bag. A witness came forward telling police that he last saw Patricia with a 30 to 35-year-old white man. Patricia and the man planned to eat at Courthouse Park and then go to Federal Way. A sketch of the man was then drawn based on the witness's description, hoping that someone could identify him. Investigators believed that Robert Lee Yates could be responsible. He was involved in similar crimes in the area, but no link to him and Patricia could be found. He was in Alabama at the time of the crime. Unfortunately, no useful leads came and the case went cold for a few decades. That was until 2018. Detectives from the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office then decided to reopen the case. Investigators reviewed the evidence and photographs from the scene, re-interviewed detectives previously assigned to the case, and sent the physical evidence to Washington State Crime Lab, as well as 2 private forensic laboratories in Texas and Florida for DNA testing. In December 2021, one of those labs, Othram Inc., provided the name of the man whose DNA matched the DNA on the cigarette and the sleeping bag and a few other items. The man was Douglas Keith Crone. When investigators decided to question him, they realized that he passed away in 2016 due to accidental causes. On February 7, 2022, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab confirmed that the DNA found at the crime scene belonged to him. Investigators tried to find out if Crone and Patricia knew each other, but haven't been able to do so. Crone had previous addresses in Seattle and Tacoma. He would have been 33 years old when the crime took place back in 1995. Crone has a criminal history in Washington State, including 5 felony convictions. One was a 1984 conviction for first-degree robbery. He was also arrested in 1994 in Pierce County on suspicion of second-degree kidnapping. Kitsap County Sheriff's Office Detective Mike Grant said, "The linchpin in the case for me was that a cigarette butt was found at the body dump location, with the same DNA as 3 items on or within the body.